This idea that your life is going to be hanging in the balance by the whim of a madman. I mean, that's good cinema across the board. It doesn't need to be residential schools. It doesn't need to be native people. It just needs to be interesting. There needs to be tension there, and there needs to be conflict. And I couldn't think of anything more tense or explosive than the residential school systems. Just this idea that there was a young girl out there with this tremendous heart and guile and courage that was going to take this whole institution on and bring it down to its knees.
Jeff Barnaby is a filmmaker from Listagouge, Mi'kmaq First Nation, adjacent to Quebec, Canada. He passed away this October 13th, 2022 at age 46. From Cherry English is Barnaby's first short film from 2004. Our protagonist, Trailer, is a Mi'kmaq man, played by Nathaniel Arcand, who would go on years later to be one of the antagonists on Netflix's zombie apocalypse series Black Summer. Trailer hooks up with a non-native girlfriend, very witchy as you can see here, and she kind of provokes this awakening in him where he reconnects with his heritage and his language. And it's all done in a very allegorical way, a lot of symbolism, pretty blatant symbolism. We call sometimes our first language our native tongue, and well, we go from dreamscape right into body horror here. Barnaby showed up on the independent filmmaking scene, showing that he had compelling stories to tell from an indigenous viewpoint and that the man knew his way around a good practical effect. Certainly a student of great cinema, but also a hardcore fan of genre. Barnaby would start working with Glenn Gould, an actor also from the Mi'kmaq community, for his next 3 projects. The first, 2007 short film, The Colony. That's Kent McQuaid as Jackson. He plays the best friend of our protagonist, Maytag, played by Gould. After Jackson accidentally chainsaws Maytag's leg on a work site, Maytag's girlfriend leaves him and his trailer gets infested by roaches. Oh, also the girlfriend's new boyfriend is Jackson, the best friend, who's also supplying Maytag with drugs and being pretty abusive towards the girl. So colony here doesn't only refer to the colony of roaches, but also Jackson as colonizer. And while that might just sound like a love triangle drama, we get some pretty freaky drug hallucinations of bugs, and Maytag at his Colonel Kurtz maddest as he's turned to shaving off his hair, I mean all of his hair, as well as gargling with insecticide. His depressed rants to his ex are said in both English and the Mi'kmaq language. Barnaby's use of his native language would continue in other works, as would the juxtaposition of emotional drama with body horror. Barnaby returns as writer-director and Gould as lead actor in the 2010 sci-fi short film File Under Miscellaneous, in which an unidentified Mi'kmaq man is so sick of the racism against indigenous people, he decides to get surgery to become white. We get scenes of sheets of skin hanging on hooks and some more funky tongue action and the return of those symbols that we had seen in From Cherry English. This short is actually that first short's opposite in a lot of ways. Whereas Trailer reconnects with his heritage through mysticism, this unnamed protagonist disconnects from his heritage and assimilates into whiteness through science. Barnaby not only wrote and directed and edited all his films, he would do music for them as well. Though, like one of his big influences, Quentin Tarantino, he didn't shy away from a kick-ass soundtrack. Also, like Tarantino, he was informed by 1970s and 1980s cinema, as well as comic books, which helps shed light on the ambitiousness of his only 2 features. The first of which, 2013's Rhymes for Young Ghouls. This film is quite simply a work of genius. A master storyteller juggling both genres and tones, weaving influences seamlessly and immersing the audience into this world. Let's go light on plot details. so as to preserve the surprise for the first-time viewer. The lead is Devery Jacobs, who would go on to American Gods and Reservation Dogs. She plays a teenager named Ayla in 1976 on the fictional Red Crow Indian Reservation, which she refers to as the Kingdom of the Crow. In his final collaboration with Barnaby, Glenn Gould is her father Joseph, recently returned from prison.
Now I'm home!
The plot with Ayla and friends is like the Goonies if they were led by Jennifer Lawrence's character from Winter's Bone, and as if instead of the bumbling Fratellis, they were going up against Gary Oldman's character from The Professional. Barnaby also somehow mixes Scorsese and Tarantino-style crime fiction with an atmosphere like literary magical realism. And all this in the setting of a 70s highly regulated Mi'kmaq reserve and oppressive Indian residential school.
I don't think Canadians, Americans, whoever living today realize how stringent those parameters were for Native people at the time.
Barnaby would use his next project and his final short film to address this using archival footage. As part of Souvenir by the National Film Board of Canada, a 4-part project addressing Indigenous identity, Barnaby's 2015 contribution was entitled or Bleed Down. Barnaby and his wife, filmmaker Sarah Del Sarand of the Dene Nation, had become parents. Being a good father was front and center of Barnaby's mind and highly influential on his next and final project, 2019's Blood Quantum. Gotta love that Tarantino trunk shot. We are back in the Kingdom of the Crow. That's right, the fictional Red Crow Nation. It's 1981. In real life, the Mi'kmaq were dealing with the Quebec police during the salmon raid, where the police were interfering with the indigenous people's control over their own fisheries. But in this story universe, the Mi'kmaq are dealing with zombies instead. Glenn Gould wasn't back for this one for some reason. Kent McQuaid, who had a small role in Ryan's for Young Ghouls, also has a small role in this. And the protagonist is named Trailer, just like in that first short film way back. Also, Brandon Oakes, Burner from the last film, is Bumper in this one. Besides, of course, being a zombie movie, there's the fact that the Mi'kmaq can't get the zombie virus. And so since they have a safe haven from the virus, there are white survivors trying to get onto their compound. So refugees trying to colonize all over again. There's also a reoccurring motif of fathers and grandfathers trying to make the best decision for their family. Something very much on Barnaby's mind as a new father himself. Also, some cool animated sections. So all things considered, I think it's really fair to say that this particular film was like a mix of Tarantino and Romero. Not surprising considering Barnaby's influences, but it also had that unsettling creep factor that Shudder loves, and that's why it was a Shudder original. You know, Barnaby had this great body of work of short films and the perfect rhymes for young ghouls. Of course, he followed it up with the flex of just giving us a banger of a zombie flick. It's exhilarating and heartbreaking to imagine what we missed out on of what would have been next. The most recent news that had come out was in July when it was announced that Netflix had a development program called Advanced Voices, the Netflix Canada Creator Program that Barnaby was a part of. So most likely we would have gotten a Netflix series. But privately, for a year, he had been battling cancer. That was revealed publicly only on October 13th at the news of his passing.
Sometimes it takes the end of the world to bring out the best in a person.
Representatives for his family, actors he's worked with, and critics from all around the world have come out to talk about how wonderful his work was, how kind a person he was, how devoted a family man he was, and how he changed Canadian cinema, Indigenous cinema, and horror.
I think I didn't really kind of set out to reinvent a genre. I didn't even know the genre existed. I just wanted to do the movies I wanted to do.